Welcome to the Coughy House Podcast. We're here to spill the tea on the latest happenings in the South Dakota medical cannabis industry. I am David, your co-host, and I'm here with Alyssa.
We're here to provide a third-party, unaffiliated platform for discussion of the cannabis industry in South Dakota. We realize that a lot of people just don't have the information that they need in order to use cannabis properly or even find the information that they need to be a user. So this episode is going to be a little different from every other episode. In this episode, we are just going to kind of introduce the podcast itself, and we're going to discuss some news, some things that are going on, just some basic background information on the cannabis industry in South Dakota. And after this week, we will have guests every week from, industry professionals, things like that, who want to come on and discuss the industry with us.
Say as of, I think this Monday, we're almost at 7,000 for the patient count. We've seen a dramatic uptick, in the last couple months, thankfully. Hopefully we can get above 10,000, before summer hits. But I think as the market grows, obviously the more the stigma will go away. I think more people just need to be aware of, the medicinal benefits that it can give you.
Yeah, I've been tracking the growth, right, on like a chart, and the average is about 200 new cards a week now, which is good but not great. I think that information is lacking, and that's really the crux of the problem. But if we've hit almost 7,000 in a year and a month, then we should be able to double that by next year, I would hope.
Right, yeah, hopefully. Do you know how many practitioners we have at the moment? Or the number?
260 maybe? Google could tell us.
I was gonna say, do you think it would be a lack of practitioners, or maybe if we had more?
There's 236. So, yes and no. It's a lack of practitioners, it's a lack of access. I think it's just a lack of information in general.
I know it's tough for a lot of people because they can't just go to their doctor. A lot of people's doctors don't have the ability to just write a medical marijuana recommendation for them. So then they have to go seek out a private doctor, and then they pay, whatever that doctor charges plus the state fees. And I know that can vary. I know once you get your card, once you pay after the doctor's fee, I think you can either pay $20 for if you're low income, or $75, I think, regular if you don't meet the low income guidelines, to be able to get your card. And then if you want to do home cultivation, it's another $20. So I do think money is a part of it as well. I wish that, that could have a little more leeway. But I'm not quite sure what their reasonings for those prices are. But
I would agree 1,000%. When people so when they go into a clinic, right, they have to pay a fee, and then when they leave that clinic, if that clinic doesn't inform them of the next steps, the process, what they need to do next to get the card, they're never gonna do it, right? So they're never gonna do the state information and all of that stuff unless that clinic tells them. So, from leaving that clinic, if they tell them what to do, then they're gonna go to the state website, and then they have to pay $75 again. And then to renew your card yearly, you have to go visit a doctor again, and then you have to pay the state again to get a new card. And, the length of time that it takes for people to get the cards varies so much, and it's kind of ridiculous. I don't think it should take 30 days for somebody to get their card in the mail. Personally, I don't know why the state doesn't do more with the local DMVs or something like that, where they can print the cards same day or same week or something like that,
No, and kind of going on that point, I don't think, as happy as I am that cannabis is, here and thriving, I think the state honestly kind of set it up a little bit for failure. There's not that many people that are working in the industry. As I know of, there's only one lady that she issues all the cards in the entire state. So out of those 6,800 cards, she's responsible for actually folding them up and putting them in the envelope and sending them out. I don't think the state has enough resources or people willing to be a part of that to help make it a more seamless transition. I'm not saying we have to follow other states to the T, but we have at least 22 other medical states that have done it their way, but we can see what's worked for them and try to apply it to us. I just don't think we have the manpower in the state, unfortunately. There should be an office.
Infrastructure.
Right, exactly.
We're missing basic just infrastructure to get it done in general.
Exactly. And it's not an easy process, like you said. You have to find the doctor on your own. because half the time, even if you are an insured, regular person, you go to your doctor, they probably don't know who, so you have to find the website, which isn't really promoted very well either. So you're going to have to go on Google, do a bunch of Google research to just find the South Dakota State website, and then you find the practitioners on there. And then just to get an appointment with one of them could be, it could cost you $400 or $500, and before you even pay the state, which is unfortunate.
And the state also kind of misleads patients. I don't think it's intentional, but so if you look up, how to get your card, and you look on the state website, it gives you that step-by-step process thing,
right.
Well, that's only after you've seen a practitioner
right.
and been certified.
Right.
So that's just the state stuff, and it doesn't tell you what to do, to get certified. So it's like the state leapfrogged.
You're missing a pretty key step.
Yeah, they leapfrogged the important part, and then they went right to this is how you pay us.
Right.
Yeah. That kind of thing, which, they're just making it very difficult by not providing information and resources, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that could be by design too. It could just be by the fact that maybe they didn't think that it would be as prominent as it is, or they would have as many people wanting to be medical patients.
They definitely underestimated the amount of people who were gonna be, enrolling in the program. If you look back at their initial projections, they thought after 3 years that there would only be 3,000 cards issued total.
That's insane.
So I'm not exactly sure how they came up with those
right.
numbers initially, but they were way, way off.
Well, if they would have stuck with the original guidelines or ailments that you had, to be able to qualify on there, they might have only had that 3,000 mark. But thankfully, I think, what was it, SB1? They just added a bunch of new ailments on there that you can have to be able to get your medical card. And it's not something, at first, I believe it was just chronic pain, which is extremely hard to, prove or disprove. And then you had AIDS, chronic wasting disease, MS, Crohn's, and they've added a couple other ones like PTSD.
Yeah, PTSD,
which is really important.
That one's a huge one. Coming from the clinic background itself, PTSD was a huge one for us specifically because, when you get an angry vet in your office, right, it's a little bit scary and anxious, right? Because everybody's told them no, right? And then you have to tell them no also. And then, you don't know how that's going to go. It could erupt and it could, be a bad situation. And I've been in a couple situations where it was oh dear, this is not good. So I'm really, really glad that they finally added PTSD to that list.
It's just unfortunate really that it's, proven to help, obviously, with a laundry list of things, even a longer list than what they've currently added. But they did add a stipulation stating that they could continue to add more things, as more research. Because, cannabis is still a fairly new thing, especially, it's very infant, actually, if you compare it to the tobacco industry or the alcohol industry. There's so much more time, energy, effort, money, and resources that's been poured into those things. And they know, which makes it even worse because they know so much more about those two things. And they know that, it is worse, honestly, in a sense. There's things that you could abuse cannabis, obviously, but we're not here for the recreational aspect. We're here for the medical aspect. So it's different. But
yeah, I like to kind of think of it as we're running a huge medical experiment on the population, right? That's essentially what we're doing, is just running a medical experiment on the population because, yeah, exactly. It's been illegal for so long that we've missed out on years and years and years of research and development and things like that. And, it's really just too bad. It's unfortunate that it needed to be like that. Even things like psilocybin mushrooms, things like that are coming on board as legitimate alternatives for mental health, right? So I think that this whole kind of holistic health revolution is just going to really, hopefully, just kind of spark a lot more research and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where it takes us, honestly. It's made such a drastic change, even in the last 5 years. Even my parents and grandparents and stuff are oh yeah, devil's lettuce, and they look down on it because that's what they've been told through fearmonger tactics and stuff like that. And I think we're finally at the point where we know more about it and know enough about it to where that doesn't work as much. It still works a little bit, but I think that's based on pure ignorance more than anything else, or they just don't want to know. I can't necessarily say pure ignorance, but I feel like some people are just either don't know, don't care, or they're just like, well, I don't want to use, I don't believe in it, so I don't think the next person should do it. When honestly, I just don't think that anybody should really care about what the next person does.
So the process for qualifying for a card is ridiculous. You know, yeah, I mean, it's simple, but really, really difficult. Like, if you know how to do it or what you're doing, then it's super simple. But if you have no idea, then it's like somebody speaking a foreign language to you. You know, I mean, first you have to find, you know, provider, practitioner, somebody like that, you know, that'll certify you. You're going to have to make an appointment with them. You're going to have to pay them. You know, you're going to have one of the qualifying conditions. And, you know, I guess we should probably rattle those off again for the audience. So initially, the qualifying conditions were cachexia, severe debilitating pain, severe nausea, seizures, and severe and persistent muscle spasms, or MS. But recently, they've added AIDS, cancer, MS, Crohn's, and epilepsy.
Along with the PTSD.
Oh, yeah, and PTSD. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like, as long as you have one of those conditions.
And have it on your medical history. And that's a key part, too. You can't just go up and say, you know, oh, I have PTSD, I have nightmares, or whatever.
Right. Yeah, you do have to have, like, medical records that support your qualifying condition. Otherwise, that practitioner is not going to certify you. I mean, if they do, that's not good.
It's not something that they should do.
Yeah, they should not be doing that. Yeah, they shouldn't be certifying you if, you know, you have nothing to back that up with.
Right. We have a good thing going, so I don't think any missteps should be used or corners should be cut to, you know, get us to where we eventually should be anyway. But kind of touching off the first step of the process is finding a practitioner. And honestly, with the laws that we have here, like, nobody can, you know, they can't say, hey, we write recommendations for weed cards, or we, like, dispensaries can't advertise, manufacturers can't advertise, growers can't advertise. Like, but
the good news is we can.
Right.
So actually, I did put a list on our website. So if you go to thecoughyhouse.com, there's a little button that says providers, and the whole list is on there. So yeah, we're pretty much, I guess, maybe the only source that can kind of do that, since we're not really affiliated with anybody. Free
agents in the game, you could say. Yeah, definitely not affiliated with anybody, whether that be from manufacturing to dispensaries or anything along the lines. Definitely not doctors or anything either. So we're kind of in the gray area when it comes to those sort of things. So
yeah, I think, like, the biggest thing that anybody's brought to my attention in this, right, is the whole, like, advertising thing, right?
That's huge.
But, you know, like, so on our website, right, just make it say 21 and over, right? You know, and because the state has a law against advertising to people under the age of 21, right? Well, disclaimers, right. And, you know, like, you can set the settings for that on every platform.
And I get the whole 21 plus thing, I guess, for a general aspect, but you can be 18 and get a med card. Unfortunately, you can't.
That is true.
You can't have anything that's inhalable, so like vaporizers or flour or anything like that. It would have to be edibles, tinctures, and you would still obviously have to meet one of the qualifying conditions. But that is something that is available. You just need to make sure that you follow the right steps. And if you don't know, I mean, you could always, you know, reach out to us, and we could help point you in the right direction. Because again, that's what we're here for, you know. To provide that platform for everybody. But I think there's a lot of unknowns out there that and even things like we don't know. We're not know-alls. I know we're learning every day. But what I do know is that we are extremely passionate in it, and that, you know, we'll continue to strive to give people the information that they deserve and that they need, honestly.
Right. Yeah. I think information. That's key. Yeah, absolutely. After somebody runs through the process, you know, to get their certification from, like, a provider, right? And then they go online to the state website, fill out all of that stuff. Then the state has 15 days to, you know, approve or deny that person's card, right? And if that person logs back into that portal within the 15 days, it resets that clock. So it's super, super important that as soon as you complete your state stuff, don't log in again at all. Just wait for an email saying that you're approved or that there was an issue or whatever.
Right.
Because literally every time you log back in, it just resets that 15 days. And, if you mess up your mailing address or, if you live in an apartment or something like that, the card will get returned to the state and you'll be locked in this mailing battle with them.
So don't be stoned when you're doing it.
Yes. Do it with a clear mind. Don't be medicated.
Right.
Then so one thing I guess that we should probably maybe discuss a little bit is when you're going through that state portal situation where you're filling out all of the stuff, there's a section on there where it asks if you want to have a designated caregiver. Right. And I think a lot of people get really confused about what that means. And basically that just means that somebody who can go to the dispensary and pick up on your behalf. So, if you're an elderly person and your son or daughter or somebody like that, wants to go to the dispensary and pick up for you, then, that's available as a resource. And that's maybe one of the things that I think the state got right.
Right. See, and more, I don't know too much about it because I have experience obviously on the dispensary aspect, and then just the compliance side. But that was kind of probably the one thing that the wording of it was a little hard to wiggle through. I totally understood the whole part of if you have somebody who has a debilitating condition where they can't speak or can't see or whatever, and they have a spouse or whoever wants to come and help them, always allowed them to come through and help them, especially if they have the caregiver card. But I think that the state needs to go through and make that more clear cut on who can and can't be a caregiver and who can and can't have a caregiver.
Yeah.
And I think another thing too that is huge, because what if you don't have access to a caregiver, or you don't know somebody that's willing to be a caregiver? There needs to be a program to where you can have people who are caregivers for multiple people, right. or a delivery service.
A delivery service, absolutely.
It's huge, especially 2 weeks ago when we had that huge snowstorm, 17 inches. There was people, I guarantee there are people that couldn't go out and get their medicine because they were stuck or they couldn't afford to shovel themselves out of the driveway because their back pain or arthritis or whatever the case may be. Every situation is treated as equal, but I think that's definitely two things that need to happen. I think there needs to be a voluntary caregiver program and then do the delivery service. I think those are two huge things.
Yeah, I agree. 'Cause right now, the caregiver thing, it's super kind of gray area. It's they worded it in a very confusing way that people just are I don't know what that means.
Probably.
So right now, so each person can have one caregiver. So if you didn't have your card, right, you could be my caregiver. There's no rule against that. The only rule for a caregiver is that they can't be a felon.
Oh, okay.
But one caregiver can be a caregiver for up to 5 patients. Okay. I do know that. So those are basically the only guidelines that they have right now.
Pretty bad. So I guess there could be a voluntary program with the...
Yeah, I think that's something that would be really beneficial.
Absolutely.
Especially to people in nursing homes.
We should figure out what we need to do to help strive for the delivery aspect too. So if
maybe
anybody
we
knows,
can get DoorDash
if you can pull some strings, let us know. Give us a shout, because I think that would be huge for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
If you can order food and you can order whatever through Postmates or Uber or whatever, DoorDash, you should, come on. It's the same thing. We need to be able to treat it as such.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. Okay, so we're going to just roll on over to the frequently asked questions that are available on the state website and go through those. So one of the first questions on there is obviously how to access cannabis. I think that we've pretty much gone through most of that.
Get a card.
Go to the dispensary, purchase your, cannabis. Make sure you purchase it from a dispensary, not a guy in a corner, that kind of thing.
And don't consume in the car.
Oh yeah, don't consume in a car.
We have a good thing going. Let's not ruin it. Treat it the same.
Yeah.
We want as patients for everybody to look at it the same as alcohol and everything. So let's treat it the same. You're not drinking a glass of whiskey while you're at a stoplight. So let's not roll a joint while you're at a stoplight either. So let's treat it the same.
Yeah, that's good. Especially when they're still charging people with ingestion. Like, beware. Like, that is still a thing. Like, being charged with ingestion is a thing.
Good old South Dakota.
Okay.
It's the next one.
Here. Is there a yearly renewal fee? Yes, there is a yearly renewal fee. I think it's the same amount, isn't it? $75.
I was going to say, would they have to see a doctor again? Would that be up to the doctor's discretion?
Yeah, they'd have to see a doctor again to get recertified, and then they would have to renew on the state website. So I think most of the clinics do like a discounted rate for the recertification.
Yeah, you'd want to find you a doctor that would actually help you out with
that. That's basically the crux of it. And then, let's see, this is a good one. What type of photo should I submit with my application? So this is after you've seen a doctor and been certified. This is when you're on the state website.
For your card.
For your card, because you do actually get like a state issued ID card, right? So it's just like a driver's license photo. So you want to, take a photo using a white or neutral background with the shoulders up, no filters, no, prettiness, no makeup. It's got to be like a wet dog photo, I got rejected the first time actually because my shoulders weren't in it. So I just sent them like 4 more selfies, and I was like, I hope one of these will work. Let's see, I'll be able to apply for a card. Well, you can apply for a card.
Went over the caregivers a little bit already. Ooh, can I grow in my home? So yeah, you need to pay the $20, right?
Yeah, it's a $20 fee for the home cultivation.
They can grow 4 at a time, but 2 can only be flowering.
2 flowering and 2 that are like seedlings. Okay. And one thing with that too is like in the state website when you're so you add that to your license when you're registering with the state, right? And that in itself can like delay your card by months.
Do they have to prove? Because I know I click no on it because I live in an apartment, so I'm not going to grow in my apartment.
So they actually, so you have to. I think I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's what you need to do. You have to like draw them a diagram of your house, right? And then you need to basically circle the room that you're going to be growing in, and then also send them a photo of the lock on the door. I believe. It has to be locked. Okay. Yeah, I believe that those are the 2 things that you have to do. But if you don't do them just so or just right or whatever, they'll delay it and it'll take forever. So like I always just recommend to people that you skip it. Right. And then once you get your card, go back and add it because it's $20.
You already have your card.
Then you've got your card and you can still go pick up your cannabis and all that. And you don't have to wait.
It's good to know.
Yeah, you can always go back and add that because you can always also go back and add a caregiver at any time too.
And going back to my reason for not doing the home cultivation because of my landlord, it's really important that you understand that like you having your medical card does not it does not protect you in employment or housing. If you live in a smoke-free property or drug-free property, whatever, I would suggest talking to them. If you want to be open and honest, I wouldn't just sit there and chief up in your house. It's probably not a good idea. You can't just say, your medical card will keep you from getting in legal trouble as long as you're following the guidelines properly. But when it comes to employment, especially with South Dakota being a right to hire state, and with housing, being private, it's something that you need to understand. You can't, if you really want to be safe, own your own property or be on your own property. But if you are in a public area or apartment or even job site, whatever,
your car,
don't consume cannabis. Just be smart about it because it's not something that it's going to end well for you. Your med card doesn't protect you.
Yeah, your med card is not going to protect you from,
getting kicked out of your house.
Getting kicked out or evicted or losing your job because your employer doesn't allow it. I mean, for the most part, I haven't really heard a lot of stories about employers not allowing it. The only thing that I've really heard is a couple maybe like warehouses, like people who operate forklifts and stuff like that who are not really on board.
Truck drivers are going to be a lot.
Yeah, and the CDL guys, like
anybody that has to deal with like Department of Transportation, heavy machinery, equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really like the only thing that I've really come into contact with as them having an issue with it.
Right.
I mean, for the most part, I think most employers are being pretty chill about it. But yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure that they're good with it.
No, absolutely. It's the last thing you want is, I'd be happy you got your med card, go home, smoke your first legally purchased pre-roll, and then you get an eviction notice on your door. You get a
sign on your door saying they could smell it down the hall or something.
Outside.
Am I allowed to consume cannabis in a car?
How will medical professionals / care providers and or law enforcement representatives be able to verify I hold a valid medical cannabis permit? Oh, I read that earlier. Okay. Either way. So what they say is the South Dakota Medical Cannabis Program has a statewide patient registry, verification, and licensing system to ensure that only verified patients and caregivers have access to medical cannabis. The patient verification system ensures that South Dakota law enforcement officials have the necessary tools to accurately identify medical cannabis patients / caregivers they may encounter. So basically, they're saying that like if you get pulled over and you have your cannabis with you, you're leaving the dispensary, whatever. I guess you wouldn't forget your card if you were leaving the dispensary, so never mind on that. But if you have it with you for some reason and you don't have your card on you, then like they can look it up to verify that you have it. So they hopefully won't take you to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
I always wondered that too.
Yeah. So they must have some sort of system where they can just type your name in and see.
Another thing too that should be, this isn't based on this, but it's a good question, is traveling with cannabis. Like, let's say you buy, the state legal limit, you can buy 3 ounces of flower, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say I want to go to the Black Hills for a weekend, whatever, obviously not consuming in the car, but put it in the trunk. Does it have to be in the original dispensary packaging? Like, I know there's other laws or other states that specifically state that, but ours doesn't. So I wouldn't think that you would, but I know there's people, because I've been asked this question before, and I couldn't comfortably say, oh yeah, you can definitely do this because it states that you won't get in trouble.
Actually, hey, if there's any law buffs, lawyers, anybody maybe who's dug into that law a little bit more and could let us know, because I also have been asked that multiple times and I'm not entirely sure either, because
I'm not good with legal jargon.
Yeah, like I'm actually not totally sure if the seal is broken, does that mean that you're in trouble? Like I have no idea also. And then let's see.
How does medical cannabis use impact a qualifying patient's employment, housing, parole status, child custody? The South Dakota Medical Cannabis Program cannot provide legal advice to qualifying patients as to the impact of medical cannabis use. Qualifying patients or others with legal questions should consult their own legal counsel.
Pretty much saying, not our problem.
Yeah, basically. Parole officers are really, the only ones who I think are treating it kind of like a get out of jail free card, in my opinion, I guess, because I've heard of a few incidences where, the person has had the card, but then, the officer won't let them smoke still, or they will request a letter from the doctor or the practitioner who certified that patient, requesting information like what they were certified for, what their condition was, all of that stuff. And I don't think that they realize that that's a violation of HIPAA.
Right.
So if any practitioner is sending a parole officer a letter that says, hi, we certified so-and-so for this condition on this date, blah, 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 that's a huge violation of HIPAA. And I think that they really need to kind of maybe fine tune those guidelines a little bit.
I feel like if you're on parole, and it's not for distribution or violent crime or something like that, if it's something petty, and you have a debilitating condition, you would be able to get access to prescription pills. So what's the difference?
That's true.
Especially if they actually need it. There's a fine line, and people really need to understand that the difference of people who want to get high recreationally and socially, whatever, and people who actually need this, because it is life changing for a lot of people, but there are obviously people that abuse it. There are things that can be abused by it. People abuse sugar in their coffee, and people abuse caffeine and nicotine and things like that. So that's always going to be there. But I think people really need to understand that the medical aspect of this is really, really key.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, this over opiates, I mean, come on.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even really compare
Seriously,
the
though.
two. They're so different, and like cannabis, like the standard of living, or like not standard, quality of living, right? That people, like just, it changes so dramatically for some people when they get their card and they start consuming, and especially for older people, I mean, most patients, I mean, are older people. Most of them are older people, and it completely changes their quality of life, completely.
I'd say my first 6 months in the industry in the state was so eye-opening. I mean, just seeing, first of all, the average age of the patients was probably 55 65, like, and that's not exaggerating at all. And my favorite thing though is just seeing the patient progress, like, and that was with the stuff that we had at the beginning, like just flour and just a small selection of edibles, no tinctures, no Rick Simpson oil, none of that. So just imagine, man, the progress that we're going to see across the board. I mean, there was literally somebody, I remember the first day I opened at a dispensary, she came in a wheelchair, and her husband was pushing her, and probably I think 3-4 months later, she was rolling herself in with a big old smile on her face, and her husband wasn't even with her anymore, grabbing her own door, everything, like. And I'm not saying that was the only thing, but I know that she was on, I think she said anywhere from like 10 to 15 different prescription pills. And she was, every time she came in, she was telling me, I'm down to 10, I'm down to 8, I'm down to 7. And just hearing that stuff is extremely heartwarming, because I went through something like that. Like, I mean, I'm only 30 years old, and I had a pretty crazy back surgery about 2 years ago, and went in for my 6-week checkup, boom, and I had to have another emergency one because of the fusion that they had done had failed. And I was on a lot of different stuff, and it sucked. Like, I had just had a kid at that time, so not being involved in my son's life as much as I'd like to be was hard. And getting off those pills and honestly working my way towards medical cannabis or treating it, like I've consumed for a long time, but my view on it changed drastically when I got to that point. And yeah, I mean, I'm an extreme advocate for it. I just think people need more information on it. They need to hear it from non-biased people, and they need to hear it from somebody who doesn't have a stake in the game. Like, right. Oh, I want you to buy it because I own a dispensary, or I don't want you to buy it because I own a jail and want you to go to jail for it. Like,
right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing that's really going to help the stigma, right, is the fact that most of the patients are older, right? So that older generation obviously, influences everybody. Right. It's a trickle down effect, right? So it's like, okay, if grandma's doing this, then it must be okay, right? And I think it's been just a wild journey watching just like the different kinds of patients come in and things like that. Like, I used to kind of joke and say that like, we're saving marriages left and right. These older people who come in with their husband, like it'll be like a husband getting certified, right? And then comes in with his wife, and while he's in there talking with the doctor, she's like, man, I don't know what we're gonna do if this doesn't work, because I'm just at my wit's end with him, and blah blah, and it's like they've been married for 30 years, and but she's so fed up with him because he's in so much pain and all of that. And I think it's great that it's finally here in South Dakota, that like we can finally offer them like some type of relief.
Absolutely. Now imagine that same situation with being a parent with a kid that has like seizures and you can't have access to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's so much room for research and all that. And and the first step obviously is legalization. So we're, baby steps. We're going to get there.
Speaking of legalization. So we had I would say a failure of a turnout this last midterm, I guess, with the, what was it, IM27 or M27?
Yeah, IM27.
There's a lot of people that just didn't vote, and I know a lot of people are going to tie that up to, or chalk that up to, I know a lot of people didn't vote, and I know they're going to chalk it up to it being midterm versus presidential year. But honestly, I think a lot of it boils down to people feeling defeated from having it pass 2 years prior to this last one, and
the government overreach.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's part of it. And I think the fact that there was no, like, the laws on it are so strict that, like, people can't speak on it. So you had all these commercials about how cannabis is bad for you and fight for the children and what I can't remember exactly what their mantra was, but there was a bunch of different ads on TV, and literally the only thing that we had positive for it was yard signs and T-shirts.
Yeah, vote yes on 27.
Exactly.
That was it. That was it. Yeah.
We need more people talking about it, and that goes back to like the
Well, I think part of it too is because, you know, like I'm 27, right? Like they can't necessarily advertise pro cannabis anything
that's why we
because
need
it's
people
against
to
the
talk
law.
about it. We need people to talk about it,
Yeah.
not establishments. And
Yeah.
that's why with the whole average patient age, like I just wish people could freely talk about it and you didn't have to be a closet smoker. Like even with it being medically legal now, going back to the job thing, like you could be a doctor and it helps you tremendously. You could smoke responsibly at home only to help you know get sleep. But if they drug test you at your job, you could be fired because what you do at home. Like, and I don't think that that's fair. And it goes to the same thing with like being an advocate for it. Like if somebody's in a position of power to where people are going to listen to them, they can't speak openly about cannabis. Because if they are, they'll probably be doxxed and nobody, I mean, they're fear of losing their job or sponsorships or whatever else because of a naturally occurring plant. Like, it's just crazy to me. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I hope it is going to be on the ballot. I think
it'll definitely be on the ballot again. Like, I think it's going to be on the ballot every time until we get it passed.
I don't
like,
think we'll
at
give
this
up.
point, I think that people are just... Like, yeah, this last election, I think it was partially that, you know, like, I think it was like 150,000 less people turned out to vote. So, like, that was a little part of it, but then also just that deflated feeling and then all of that constant bombardment of, like, the anti-marijuana movement, right?
Yep.
Just constant.
Striking the fear
And, I
in
mean,
people.
that's not going to go away, but maybe people just needed, like, a little break, and then maybe next time around, right?
Yeah.
Then we'll hit it, you know, full force again. I mean, every time that it's failed, right, they've learned something new. So,
right. And see, I definitely want to go full force when it comes to this, but I also don't want it to be deemed as like us pushing it on people. Like I don't want it to be like you need to get your med card or you need to smoke cannabis, blah blah blah, whatever. Because that's definitely not the case. It's not for everybody. But there are people that it can and will benefit, and they don't have access to it, or it costs too much to get their card, or whatever the case may be. But if it just becomes, you know, decriminalized across the board, and you can't get in trouble for it, and you have access to clean medicine, I think that's honestly what matters most at the end of the day. I hope it goes through. There are some things that we need to do as a community to get it to go through. People need to talk more openly about it. And yeah,
I think this is like a good first step
Absolutely.
for that, because we're not affiliated with anybody or anything. Like, this is a completely third party thing, you know, like
right.
not influenced, right? So I think having a platform where we can discuss all of this stuff and, you know, get other people's input and all of that is really gonna be a huge benefit next
Right.
time around. Huge benefit.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing grows. This is definitely, I mean, I was extremely nervous coming in, as I'm sure you guys could tell at the beginning of the episode. But, you know, this is something that I'm extremely passionate about, and I know you're extremely passionate about. It's something that I know a lot of people out there just need to hear good information, like the correct information. And we don't know it all, but we're willing to, you know, put in the work, put in the research, and listen to our peers and, you know, get the right information out there, not be biased, and, you know, just discuss what, because this is still new. Like, we don't know. Obviously, other states have been legal for a while now, but this is new to us. And a lot of people have been to other states, like recreational states, and so they have high expectations of what South Dakota cannabis should look like, which is totally fine. We'll get there. And I think so far we're doing pretty good, honestly. I think if you were to compare
It's
South
been a
Dakota,
very slow
6 months.
rollout.
Right. I think, but if you were to compare us, like however the first dispensary opened, when did Unity Road open? Like
August?
yeah, I was gonna say late summer. So not even a year yet. We're almost at 10,000, which is over double what they originally predicted for the entire population, for the entire, you know, whole medical card program. So I think we're doing good. I think the amount of products that we have out available now could be comparable to other states, you know, not even a year down the road. And I think it helps that we have a lot of passionate people in the industry. We just need to keep those people in the positions of power and not
for the money. I think that's a huge thing, is it needs to be done right by people who actually care for the right reasons.
That's true. I feel like almost everybody, well, I guess everybody that I've come in contact with who works in the industry, right? Like, this is their life. Literally, this is their whole life, is
Most of them,
cannabis and talking about cannabis and, you know, like what's going on with cannabis and all of that, you know. I mean, yeah, it absolutely, it almost kind of just consumes you, you know, and I think it's
Another
really
feeling.
great. It's great because then, you know, like, the people who are, you know, the industry people are like informed and they
Right.
know what's going on, right? And they're, you know, they're on board with changes, with, you know, this, that, you know, and I think it'll be really exciting to have, you know, different people on
Yeah.
to provide their perspectives and tell us, you know, like what they're doing, you know, and how we
Absolutely.
can help with that and things like that.
Yeah, we'll highlight definitely multiple POVs in the industry, whether it be from, you know, a patient's perspective, a dispensary's perspective, a cultivator, whatever. You know, so you'll definitely hear it all once we get through there. But yeah, I'm just excited, man. I'm glad we finally decided to do this, and I hope that everybody listening is as excited as we are, or viewing. But yeah, I don't know. Let's just do this right and keep it going.
Yeah, and if, you know, we give you any incorrect information or we mess up a fact or anything like that, just let us know in the comments. I'm sure that you'll all tell us. So, you know, we'll be sure to, like, you know, get you the right information if we, you know, don't know something.
this
or
is a
we,
community thing.
Yeah, if we mess up with something, we'll be sure to, you know, throw in like oh, hey, actually, you know.
We'll correct it on the next episode.
Yeah, we'll correct it. We'll make sure that we are providing legitimate, accurate information.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the Coughy House Podcast. We had a great time. Episode 1, hopefully, you know, on to bigger and better things. And yeah, I'm David, your co-host.
And you can go ahead and visit us online at thecoughyhouse.com. We have a practitioner list on there, dispensary list coming soon. We'll be adding updates on there here and there. All of our podcasts will be available on there. You can either watch or listen. We'll have the links all on the website. And you can be sure to like and share our Facebook and Instagram.
Share. We need to get it out there.
Yes. Be sure to like our Facebook page and our Instagram, and be sure to share all of our posts to get the information out there. Other than that, thanks, guys.
Stay medicated.